Welcome, everyone. Anybody here for the first time tonight? Welcome to everyone that's showing up for the first time. Anybody that's joining us online for the first time, welcome to you. I like to start class by having you talk to each other. We do a Buddhist meditation, but a core part of Buddhism is connecting with other people on the path. The path is how we refer to the practices of Buddhism, the Eightfold Path. It's really important to meet other people who are interested in this because it's rare to actually know people who are serious about developing wisdom and living a wise life and becoming compassionate and kind and forgiving. And so we need each other. We take refuge in it's called the Sangha, the community. Tonight, I'm going to talk about and start a series for the next few Mondays where I'm going to give teachings and practices on the Buddha's heart practices, what we call developing a wise heart, positive emotional responses to life, to reality. And they are loving kindness. Maybe you've heard in Buddhism, it's called metta, loving kindness meditation practice. Karuna, compassion, developing compassion for pain, for our pain and the pain of others. Appreciation, non-attached appreciation, and which is also taught as empathetic or sympathetic appreciating other people's happiness. The opposite of jealousy, and sometimes when you have that feeling when someone else is happy, and you're like, fuck that guy, successful bastard. And then, the Buddha is saying, actually, the enlightened response is, good for you. I appreciate you. I congratulate you. I celebrate and I enjoy your success. I empathize with your happiness rather than feel threatened and jealous about it. And equanimity. So loving kindness, compassion, appreciation, and equanimity. And then forgiveness, I would kind of add to the list. The traditional list is just the four: loving kindness, compassion, appreciation, equanimity. Forgiveness is an aspect of loving kindness. According to the Buddha, in order to truly be in loving kindness towards ourselves and to others, we have to first free ourselves from resentment, from hatred, from ill will, from wishing harm upon our enemies. In order to really open this loving capacity within us, we have to learn to forgive ourselves and to forgive each other, and to ask for forgiveness and to make amends for the harms that we have caused in our lives. When you think about, for a moment, think about this list. Forgiveness. How's your forgiveness skills? It's a skill. It's a practice. If you were going to rate your forgiveness skill 1 to 10, are you like a ninja at forgiving yourself? Or are you like a kindergartner? Like, I don't know much about forgiveness. Not very good at it. I'm good at hating, good at resenting, super good at self-centered fear, not that good at forgiveness. When you think of loving kindness, are you generally kind to yourself? To your mind? When your mind is critical, are you kind to the criticizing mind, the judging mind? Or are you kind of shut the fuck up to your mind? Are you angry, unkind to your own mind? Now, all of these, there's no judgment. I hope the way that I'm saying it doesn't sound too critical or judgmental. From a Buddhist perspective, it's just the way we are, humans. It's normal to be unloving, unkind, unforgiving, not very appreciative, not very equanimous. That's normal. What Buddhism is giving us are tools to develop the skill of forgiveness, of compassion, of non-attached appreciation, empathetic appreciation, to develop equanimity. It's something that comes with months and years of meditative training. This path leads us to these positive emotional responses. So set up these 5: forgiveness, loving kindness, compassion, appreciation, equanimity. When you reflect on yourself, where you're at, what comes up? What needs work? What are you working on? Maybe you've become really good at being kind, but still not so good at appreciation. Maybe you're quite easy to appreciate, but not a lot of compassion. Maybe equanimity, it comes naturally to you, but you have a lot of resentments, not a lot of forgiveness. And all of us, if we're honest, we'll kind of check, part of what we're doing in this kind of practice is this introspection and this analysis and this humble acknowledgement. I'm not as free as I'd like to be. I'm not as free as I could be when it comes to being forgiving or compassionate. I'm not as compassionate as I'd like to be. I know if I was more compassionate, I would suffer a lot less than I do. I know if I was more non-attached in my appreciation of the success of others, I wouldn't have that envy and jealousy that has me striving so often in my life and resentful at other people's happiness. So that humble self-awareness of like, yeah, I'm not very good at any of that shit. That's why I'm here, asshole. Why are you asking me to admit it publicly? And even the ability, some of you maybe have been practicing for a long time. There can be this, I don't know, sort of attitude in spiritual circles of like, well, you're not allowed to brag. You're not allowed to be like, yeah, I'm really fucking forgiving. I'm the most compassionate person probably in the whole room. Of course, we don't want to that, but I am asking you, this is a long-winded setup, to talk to each other about what you're working on, maybe a little bit about how you've seen how these practices have led to more states of compassion or forgiveness or appreciation or more equanimity. Maybe you've seen some progress over the years of your practice. Maybe you're brand new and this just sounds like a good idea. Like, you hear it and you're like, oh yeah, I'd like that. That's why I'm here. I'd like to work on this stuff. So discuss kindness, compassion, equanimity, and maybe to keep it concise, choose one. What's your relationship like? Choose one that feels like, oh, that's the one. When he says it, there's something in me that resists it and knows that's where my work is. Or there's something in me that, does that make sense? Sometimes when you hear something and your kind of ass gets tight, you're like, oh, fuck, forgiveness makes my ass tight. Or appreciation or whatever it is for you. That there's that kind of visceral. Last week we talked about soft belly, like what kind of forgiveness tightens me. My belly my jaw clenches, my ass gets tight, whatever it is. So choose one and talk a little bit about your experience with one of these practices, positive emotional responses. And then we'll do some meditation. We'll start with loving kindness meditation tonight, and we'll move on the next few weeks. Small groups, introduce yourself to 2 or 3 people in the room you don't know, and then talk to them about this stuff. Before I give the meditation instructions, I have a few more things to say, perspectives to share about this. As you're probably aware, maybe not, depending on how new to practice you are, the Buddha's core teachings begins with the acknowledgement of suffering, the first noble truth. There's a level of suffering that we all experience, that all living beings experience. Maybe we find ourselves here because we've gotten curious and disillusioned with some of the ways that life is providing us with not enough happiness and too much suffering. The second truth points out that all of our suffering is created by repetitive craving. And that's true for everyone. It's craving, it's clinging, it's aversion, it's natural, it's not personal, it's not your fault. It's part of the human instinctual drive towards survival, which manifests as craving for pleasure and aversion to pain, attachment, aversion, self-centeredness, the human condition. The good news of Buddhism is it's not your fault. It's not sin. It's not failure. It's not a defect of character. It's not a shortcoming. It's not because you're a broken toy. It's because you have a nervous system. It's because you have a sensitive psychology that is easily wounded, traumatized, and craving is natural, is normal, is totally impersonal. But the third truth says we don't have to stay stuck in the status quo. The norm is to go through life chasing pleasure, running from pain, resenting, hating, loving the pleasure, hating the pain of existence. And this is just a kind of, turns into a pretty miserable life. And the third noble truth is it's actually possible. This is the Buddha's insight, his awakening. It's actually possible to end suffering, to come to a place in our lives where we don't turn pain into suffering. We just learn how to be with our pain, with our discomfort. And this is where compassion comes in. Compassion is the wise response. We could call it the antidote to suffering about pain, is developing compassion. This is, and the other half of that is our natural tendency to cling to pleasure, get attached to pleasure, crave for pleasure. It's possible to develop non-attachment. Mindfulness shows us the impermanent nature, the truth of constant change, and how clinging always hurts us. And then, the Dharma, our meditation practice, the wisdom develops and starts to show us and to develop the ability to be non-attached to pleasure, to appreciate pleasure, to enjoy pleasure. And this is that teaching that we'll get to in the next couple of weeks of non-attached appreciation and sympathetic joy. There's opportunities every day to enjoy pleasure without turning it into suffering, without clinging to it. And not only ours, but each other's. There's all of these people in the world having pleasure, having happiness, and enjoying themselves. And how often does our, tendency feel jealous about that? Take it personal, other people's happiness, like there's somehow less for us. Part of the third noble truth, the truth that we can end suffering, is that we can learn to meet pleasure with non-attachment and other people's pleasure and happiness with appreciation rather than feeling threatened by it. Jealous, envy, coveting, all of those things that, they're on all of the lists because they're pretty natural human mind states. And Buddhism is offering us this really radical tool, ability, intervention that says, actually, you don't need to stay stuck in the status quo. You can train your mind to be kind, to be compassionate, to be non-attached. And it will lead to equanimity, this feeling of well-being in the midst of both joy and sorrow, in the midst of both getting what you want, or not getting what you want, gain and loss, losing what you want to keep. The Buddha said that his 7-year journey, spiritual search, which led him, he said, I hit a bunch of dead ends. I went and studied with this guru, and they taught me about, they taught me TM, and that shit didn't work. And I went and studied with this guru, and they taught me about, how to, do the downward dog, and that shit didn't work. And, I had all these dead ends of like teachers that he said, and then I he said, I knew that it was my attachment, my aversion that was the cause of my suffering. So then he spent years in asceticism of saying like, well, if it's craving for pleasure, that's the problem. I'll just not have any pleasure ever again. I'll renounce all pleasure, and I'll go live naked in the forest and just be, ascetic, kind of extreme renunciate. He said, and then, no matter how much I defied craving, I still had craving. No matter how much I, rejected pleasure, I still was attached to pleasure and averse to pain. And it's when he discovered mindfulness. He said mindfulness was the turning point. Present time, non-judgmental awareness was the turning point. And when I learned mindfulness, I learned the truth of impermanence and how to be non-reactive to the cravings and the aversions, to not take them personal, to not think that they were something that I had to obliterate, but that I just needed to be aware of the impermanent arising and passing. He said, when I did this, I came to nirvana, the third truth. I came to the end of suffering. No more craving, no more aversion, no more selfish, self-centeredness, no more clinging to I, me, mine. He said it was really mindfulness that was the key. The four foundations of mindfulness. And when he was asked, well, what remains when we're not fueled, when our life isn't fueled by craving and aversion and self-centered fear, he said, what remains is a feeling of loving kindness for all living beings. He says, now my heart naturally has love and kindness for myself and for everyone else, all living beings, now that I'm free from that clinging to self. He says, and now I have compassion for my own pain. I'm able to meet my own pain with friendliness, not hating my pain, but learning to be with it, to tolerate it, to have mercy and compassion, and not just my pain, but the pain of others, all living beings met with compassion. He said, and non-attached appreciation and equanimity. And so part of what's being said here in traditional Buddhism is that if you practice mindfulness deeply enough, long-term outcome will be a loving heart, a compassionate heart mind. A non-attached appreciation and equanimity will be the outcome of mindfulness. And as those of you who are part of this community and come regularly, you know that 90% of the time I'm giving you mindfulness meditation instructions. It's what we mostly do here. Because I do believe actually that mindfulness will lead to compassion if you're practicing mindfulness appropriately. Concentration meditations will not lead to compassion. But mindfulness eventually will. You turn towards your pain. You see the impermanence. You're not just ignoring it. All of that having been said, my own teachers early in my practice and my view is rather than waiting for mindfulness to do the trick, rather than just say, I'm only going to practice mindfulness and wait for the compassion to spontaneously arise in my heart. The Buddha also said, in the meantime, develop compassion through reciting these phrases. Develop loving kindness. Train your mind to be kind. At one point, somebody said, well, how do these repetition of phrases or this repetition of meditation work? And he says, it's as though you had a soft stone and you were dripping water on it over and over. And that water would just bounce off. But eventually, if you put water in that soft stone enough times, it will create a trail. It'll create a divot in the stone. It'll create a pathway. And I don't know if you're catching on to this. A lot of you have probably heard me say this before. My sense is what he was talking about was neuroscience, that he understood neuroplasticity, and that what he was teaching us was if you say kind things over and over and compassionate things over and over, and you say forgiveness a million times until you mean it, you will create forgiveness pathways in your mind. You will create compassionate pathways in your, you'll create those neural pathways by the repetition of these phrases that we do in the heart practices. So being a kind of, Western science indoctrinated person, I like this perspective that what we are literally doing is training our minds by saying, in loving kindness tonight, we'll say to ourselves, may I be happy. And then maybe you'll have that internal feeling of like, no, I'm not happy. I'm not even sure I deserve to be happy with all of the, shit I've caused in my life, all the shit I've been through. And you say, may I be at ease? And then, internally, maybe some people say these phrases to themselves and they're like, finally, I'm giving myself permission to be kind to myself. And you eat it up. Some of us, like my experience has been, I had a lot of resistance, a lot of conditioning that said, this isn't safe, it's too vulnerable, it's too soft, it's too fake, it's too like, I even was suspicious when I learned loving kindness. Like everything I said so far, when the Buddha said there's suffering, there's a cause of suffering, I was like, this guy's onto something. He knows about suffering. I know about suffering. We started talking about loving kindness. I was like, I don't know. Maybe this is some shit the hippies maybe added in the 60s. Because, when you were talking about suffering and sickness and old age and death, I was in. But then when you started to talk about be kind to everybody all the time, I'm suspicious now. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if I can even learn to do that. It's so foreign to my wounding, to my conditioning. Now, loving kindness. In the Buddha's original teachings, there's a whole teaching, and the core meditation instruction is, may all beings be at ease. He says, wishing in gladness and safety, this repetition of training your mind to wish ease upon all living beings, including ourselves. And it's this general wish that is always appropriate. May all beings be at ease. May I be at ease. And it's connected to equanimity in some ways, because what we're saying is, may I be at ease. May you be at ease, no matter what's happening. It's not saying, may everything be easy for you and go your way, and may you have no struggles and no, may you live a fantasy life. It's saying, may you learn to be at ease, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, whether your life is really fun right now or really challenging right now. May you learn to be at ease with what is. And so it's more of a wish for acceptance, a wish for contentment in the midst of your reality. Not may I be at ease when shit gets better. Right now, in the midst of whatever's happening, may I learn to be at ease. So that's the core metta, loving kindness phrase. Then saying, the way that I learned metta, my teachers, my father, Stephen Levine, and my early teachers, Cornfield and Goldstein and Sharon Salzberg, wrote a cool book called Loving Kindness. And it's something like the revolutionary art of happiness. And it was one of the first teachings I read on loving kindness. And the way that they did it was a commentary-based instruction that said, may I be happy, may I be at ease, may I be free from suffering. May you be happy, may you be at ease, may you be free from suffering. So you may have learned it that way from me or from another teacher. Technically, when we're using all three of those phrases, may you be happy is an appreciation phrase, not a metta phrase. May you be happy, may your happiness grow, may it continue. That is what we call mudita, appreciative joy. May you be at ease, that's metta. May you be free from suffering is actually compassion. It's karuna, compassion teaching. May you be happy, may you be at ease, may you be free from suffering is how we generally, in the kind of Western Buddhist tradition, we call it metta, we call it loving kindness. But technically, we're doing the first three heart practices together. Happiness, ease, and so appreciation, kindness, and compassion. And even that ease, loving kindness, as I said, has a bit of equanimity in it. So in some ways, we're doing all four of them. May you be at ease with what is. Very similar, loving kindness and equanimity. Equanimity has some more specific teachings on understanding karma. We'll get there in the next few weeks. Maybe that's enough as a setup for anybody who's new to these practices. I'll give the instructions, and I might mostly stick with loving kindness towards ourselves tonight. I probably will open, there is some commentary-based traditional 5 categories where you send it to your benefactors, to neutral people, to your enemies, to yourself, and to all living beings. Tonight, we'll see where it goes, but I might keep it a little bit on learning to be kind, compassionate, appreciative towards ourselves, because I do believe that we have to experience this stuff from the inside out. And most people will admit it's easier to feel kind and compassionate towards others than it is towards ourselves. And I would question how genuine our compassion for others is if we don't have compassion for ourselves first and foremost. And that when we do have kindness towards ourselves, then our kindness feels like more genuine towards others. So find a way to sit that's comfortable. I'll give some meditation instructions, and we can have some discussion afterwards. Take a moment to adjust your posture so that it's relaxed but upright. Release any unnecessary tension. Soften your belly, your jaw, your shoulders. Imagine letting the flesh of your body hang loosely around the upright skeleton. And reflect on your healthy desire to be happy, to be at ease, to not suffer. This wise, natural, universal feeling we all have of wanting happiness and ease, well-being. Perhaps even taking a moment to reflect on all of the dead ends that we've traveled down seeking happiness, in sense pleasures or materialism, all of the things that haven't worked very well. Got us strung out, sent to rehab, locked up, or just dissatisfied, just unhappy. Just stressed out. The Buddhist perspective is that the causes of happiness are internal, not external. The experience of ease and well-being is a skill we can develop in our own trained mind, our own wise heart. It's not about the world being any different than it is, but we can transform our responses to the world. Begin saying to yourself with as much sincerity as you can muster in this time, may I be happy, just as I am. Even if you don't quite mean it yet, just dropping that intention into the heart mind. May I be at ease, just as I am. May I be at ease with this mind and its wonderful abilities and its not so wonderful habits, tendencies. May I be at ease in this body with its cravings and aversions, limitations. This body subject to aging and illness and death. May I learn to be at ease in this impermanent body. May I be free from suffering. The Buddhist understanding that suffering is caused by clinging to pleasure. May I be free from clinging and the suffering that attachment, that craving, that clinging creates in my life. May I free myself from clinging, learning to let go. May I be free from the suffering of resentment, aversion to pain. May I learn to meet my pain with mercy, compassion. The short form is, may I be happy, may I be at ease, may I be free from suffering. Saying this to yourself slowly over and over. Placing these kind thoughts in your heart and mind. May I be happy, may I be at ease, may I be free. But understanding that we're not wishing for some magical solution, but that we're developing the skill, we're developing kindness. If your mind starts to think about something else, just come back to the next phrase, start over. Replace that plan, memory, fantasy with the humble aspiration, may I be happy in this moment just as I am. May I be at ease. May I be free from suffering. Take some effort to continue this slow mantra-like practice over and over. Pause between phrases and soften your belly. Breathe it into your heart. You don't have to mean it or feel any certain way for it to be working. Just one drop of this wise aspiration after the other, creating a habit of being kind to ourselves, wishing ourselves well, ease, freedom. If discomfort in your body starts to take your attention away from the phrases, direct the phrases towards the discomfort. May I be at ease with this ache, with this pain, with this discomfort. May I be free from suffering about this unpleasant sensation, learning to meet it with compassion rather than resisting it and making it worse. May I learn to be happy and content in the midst of unpleasantness. Real-time application of metta, of loving kindness towards the sensations in your body. As we connect with our own very natural desire to be happy, to be at ease, to not suffer, we can begin extending this universal human condition to each other. Understanding that just as I wish to be happy, I know this is true for you as well. I understand that we all want to be at ease. None of us want to suffer. So perhaps beginning by sending these loving kindness phrases to the people you were talking to in the small groups, at the beginning of class. May you be happy. May you be at ease with your life just as it is, with your mind, your body. May you learn to meet the pain in your life with compassion, the pleasure with non-attached appreciation. Through your own effort, may you be free from suffering. Not a magical wish, but an encouragement, a well-wishing for our own hearts to be more expansive, more open, extending loving kindness to each other. Just as I wish to be free, may you be free. May you be at ease. May you be happy. Bringing to mind all of the important people in your life, your loved ones, friends, family, your sangha, your fellowship, your community. Radiating kindness from your heart to theirs. May you be happy, may you be at ease, may you be free, my friends. Gradually expanding beyond the known to the unknown, outward in all directions. East and west, north and south, above, below. Perhaps visualizing, imagining this planet and covering all of the continents and oceans with loving kindness, including all of the living beings, the humans, the animals, the sky, the sea, earth. With a wish for happiness and ease and well-being, with compassion for all of the suffering that's happening right now on this planet, with appreciation for all of the joy that is also happening right now on this planet. Ending with a couple of minutes of the inclusive phrases where we say, may all beings be happy. May all beings be at ease. May all beings be free from suffering. Reflecting for a moment on your experience. If it's a new practice to you, kind of just inquiring, oh, what was that like? How did it feel? How sincere was that inner voice? How much resistance? Judgment, maybe? If you've been doing this practice for some time, reflecting on, how was it tonight? And how has this developed over the years of practice? How has it shifted? If it has. As I said earlier, we all have different relationships to these kind of practices. I had a lot of resistance to loving kindness practice in the beginning. And it took me really years of persevering with it and saying it and not really meaning it, very kind of not being real sincere about the well wishes towards myself or others on some level. But that at some point there was a shift where the phrases started to feel more genuine, more authentic, more sincere. And I started to feel like it was more true to, I actually really want, the sincerity of it became more clear. And then at some point, I stopped resisting it and started to really feel quite like almost a warmth, like the practice will create, of like this inner feeling of like, yes, this is what this is true. This is, I do want to be happy. I do want to be at ease. I do want to be free from suffering. And then also this feeling of like, actually, I am mostly at ease. Oh, this was not true when I began this practice. And after these many years of practice, it was such an aspiration in the beginning. And then at some point, we come to the place where it's like, I'm not just wishing for this, I'm embodying this. I actually do feel happy a lot of the time. I actually do feel at ease a lot of the time. I'm actually free from suffering. It's not just I want to be there, but I am here. Sometimes there's a form of this practice where we say, may I be happy? May I do what needs to be done to be happy? I am doing what needs to be done. that acknowledging that it's not just aspirational, it's an action that I'm putting in. May I be at ease. May I do what needs to be done. So it's not a magical wish. May I magically be at ease. It's not like a prayer. We're not looking for some sort of external grace to bestow ease on us. We're training our mind. May I do what needs to be done to be at ease. I am doing what needs to be done. I'm actually taking those actions right now. And then the results are more and more ease in our lives. Maybe open to discussion, questions, comments about this kind of practice and how it feels, and any questions about it. Please, Ramage.
I mean, still kind of one of the first things that I think about. Well, at least, maybe it's more of just that listening to me monastics, but like, like Ajahn Lama was talking about this whole, the New Age thing about loving yourself. And he's like, there is no self. Like, what are we even talking about here? Right. And that part, so that part to me still, I'm kind of like, yeah, what is going on there? The way that I can maybe kind of make sense of the compassion is kind of like, if just like if there's pain in someone else, if there's pain, like, I don't know, in like one of the 5 aggregates, it's like, that's not self, and you have compassion for this thing that's not self. Kind of makes sense, but the love that I'm still missing. Or is it like for the aggregates in the same as for there would be some other being or some, I don't know.
When we say ourselves, what are we talking about? Right? We're not talking in, yes, in the ultimate Buddhist understanding, there's not a solid, separate, permanent self to be found here. But in the kind of common way, when, say, I am, what are you talking about? You're talking about your body, your mind, your, emotion, your heart, these aggregates, what you're referring to as the aggregates. So yeah, learning to be kind and loving towards the aggregate of mind, of consciousness, and of, the mind states, learning to be loving and kind towards this self of this body. It's not a permanent self. We know that, once you know that, but it's still worthy of kindness and a loving, a friendly relationship, because we're battling, until awakening, we're battling that aversive, clinging, craving tendency that the aggregates produce. So friendliness, love, kindness, compassion towards your body, towards your mind, towards your heart. Yes, it's not ultimately who you are, but it is your experience on a moment-to-moment basis. And so my sense of what's being said here is learn to be kind to all of these experiences that we are having, And, maybe if you can dwell in the emptiness of self, then maybe love isn't necessary. Maybe it is a relative skill. On that, but for the rest of us that aren't there, aren't abiding in the emptiness, and we're mostly reacting in the relative, emotional, reactive, physical world, the kinder you can be, the less you'll suffer. The more loving, and love and kindness and, metta we call loving kindness. But I'm told that the more literal translation is unconditional friendliness. And we could ask the same question. Friendliness to who? To what? I don't know if everybody's familiar with where Ramage is asking this question from, that in Buddhism, the understanding is there is no self. So who am I being friendly to? There's no permanent self. There's no autonomous self. But we can just take this practice on more of a relative level, being kind to your body, to your mind, to your heart will alleviate so much unnecessary suffering in our lives. Please, Frank.
Yeah, so what you said that really resonated with me this time is this idea of having mercy on your fear. And I've been living in a lot of fear these last 3 or 4 months. And I always think of these different aspects of myself as literal impersonations, like different cartoon characters, you know. We're in this nice warm cabin sitting around a table eating noodle soup or whatever. And outside fear is, it's just dark and heavy, you know. And I never thought of personifying fear as like this character.
Yeah.
And what would that look like to be merciful and invite him into the cabin, you know? And so it kind of occurred to me, and you know, open the door, and this kind of jagged black kind of crystalline brittle guy comes in. It's like, dude, you've been doing a lot of fucking heavy lifting out there, you know. Come on in,
have some soup,
have a soup, you know. And just the idea of having that and being merciful to this thing that's been so intense these last months. It's like a real, I mean, it really transformed my understanding of what that can be. So I really appreciate it. I just love sometimes in these meditations, I get these images that just make me laugh.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, before I got here, I was like ready to slit my throat over. You know, it's just such a great perspective.
It's a really classic image in, I think, Tibetan Buddhism, where they talk about inviting the demons in for tea. That as long as we are afraid of fear and try to keep it at bay, or anger or lust or whatever afflictive emotion it is, and try to keep it out, as long as we're resisting it, it just grows more powerful and more scary and more. But then when you actually say, you know, okay, hello, fear and lust and greed and self-pity or whatever that strong emotion is, and you invite it in and you turn towards it and you tend to it, may you be at ease, you know, you're welcome here. You know, you also belong, this you know, these difficult emotions. The wise emotions, the loving, the kindness, the friendliness includes response to every aspect of our mind that produces all kinds of afflictive emotions. So I love that you spontaneously had that insight of like, oh, resistance is going to make it worse, but if I invite it in, it's not as scary as it is when I try to keep it out. And it's kind of impossible to keep out, or it shuts, you know, that image of like, now I have to stay in, you know, away from it, numb something, and it's just impossible to avoid. So loving kindness, not just, you know, when we're talking about towards ourselves, and the way that Ramage asked that question, you know, the skandhas of the mind, you know, and the it's just part of what we are. It's part of what we're experiencing. And it includes joy and sorrow, and it includes, you know, faith and fear and confidence and doubt, and all of those dualities of our human mind. And we like the positive ones, but we don't like the ones that are painful or afflictive. We have to learn to be kind even to that, even to our confusion. What Buddha called Mara, right? That fear. Anita said, I see you, Mara. And, you know, you get to exist too. But I don't have to believe you. I don't have to. So I love that. I love that you had that experience. If anybody at home has a question, feel free to raise your hand in the reactions tab at the bottom there. Tibby, go ahead.
Hey, Noah, when you're talking about the non-self, giving love and compassion, like if we aren't self, right? I don't know if I'm making this up, and I just want you to affirm it, not bullshit future thing, or if I'm right? If we're not self, and we're just, oh, we see the skin, all those practices, skin, compassion of the skin, then the person on the outside that I'm in a financial relationship with that I want to kill right now, right? She's just like the skin. It's skin. It's this thing outside. It's just it's what it is right now. But so that's why I'm asking you the non-self. We're just looking at these different conditions and elements in ourself that make us up and giving it love and kindness. But we're not saying, oh, the skin is mine. Is that incorrect? Can you correct me on that?
Temporarily, we are these bodies. And we are totally responsible for our actions in these bodies. And, we have the karma that that our actions, our volitional speech and our volitional actions, there's a karmic momentum playing itself out through this body that is me, that is you, right? That's true. So we don't want to use ultimately that there's not a self to be found in your body or a self to be found in my body to somehow dismiss total responsibility, and also needing to have good boundaries and needing to have conflict. And when somebody's, taking advantage of you financially, or we don't want to use ultimate teachings to get in the way of understanding. The equanimity teaching is probably more appropriate for this situation. Yes, loving kindness. Yes, compassion. Yes, appreciation. The equanimity teaching that says, remember, everyone has their own karma. Everyone's happiness or unhappiness is going to depend on their actions, their karma, not our wishes. You can wish you can suffer a lot in this lifetime about wishing, ill will upon your enemies. But actually, your hatred of them is not going to make them unhappy, probably, depending on how much they care about you. But, their karma is going to make them unhappy. It's not our wishes. Likewise, you can love somebody unconditionally, and your love isn't going to make them happy. That has to come from within them. It's their non-attachment. It's their love, their compassion that's going to truly make them happy. It doesn't. So we don't want to take these ultimate teachings about self and forget the relative truth that we have karma for our actions. And yes, we don't want to suffer at people. I was actually watching my mind wander into some resentment during the loving kindness tonight. And it's like, does your mind have like the top 10 favorite people to resent? And it just says, like you're sitting there and your mind says, remember that fucker? And my mind started doing that. I'm like, man, I've spent so much time suffering at this person. And just came back to the phrase, may I be at ease. May I be free. But the mind's habit, it just wants to suffer at them again. Wow, you want to go back to, we're on that one again? Big surprise. May I be at ease in this moment. I don't actually want to feed that resentment. I don't want to say, it doesn't stop my mind from drifting to it. Moment of quiet. Hey, why don't you suffer about that resentment? Let me come back. May I be at ease. May I be free. May I be happy in this moment. I don't want to feed that thought. So yes, skin, bones, flesh, organs, nervous system, consciousness. I don't know where the self is in here. Where's the I? Where's the me? Where's the mind? This is the Buddha's question. Good question. But let's not let that get in the way of saying, I'm fully responsible for my actions in this body, in this lifetime, whether there's a self to be found or not. You're fully responsible for your actions in that body, in this lifetime, whether we want to call that a self or not. Buddhism lands in there's not a permanent self, but there is a karmic momentum happening here that each one of us owns. Those 5 daily reflections. I'm subject to sickness, aging, death, loss. My only true possession are my karma. The only thing that we actually own in this lifetime, you don't get to keep your car, you don't get to keep your shoes, you don't get to keep your partner, none of that. What do you keep at death? Your karma. That's it. Your only true possession, how you have behaved in this lifetime from the Buddhist perspective. And so remembering that, and remembering that whoever is you're in conflict with, they have their karma in it. And we don't want to also use someone else's, well, they have their karma, so I don't need to have good boundaries, or I don't need to get the lawyer and do the, legal thing because they ripped me off. We still want to have those, I guess, relative societal, accountability. When somebody rips us off, they're like, what can I do? Well, I guess we're going to court, if you're not going to pay your debts or whatever it is. If there's some, something we can do, we do it. And if there isn't something that we can do, then we let it go as much as we can. I don't see any hands at home, so please, Will.
I hope your answer doesn't overlap too much with the previous, but I find myself recently, you talk about forgiveness and compassion. I recently spent some time back home on the East Coast with some friends, some people I care about, who I feel that I'm lacking forgiveness and compassion for, in the fact that I feel compassion for them, and that I am trying to impart some of the things that I've cultivated by coming here and all that kind of stuff. They suffer in a way that I try to butt in and help, which I, whether I'm doing the right thing or not, I feel like I am. But then when it comes to feeling compassion and forgiveness for others, I find myself getting mad at them, right? And just yesterday, I had an imaginary argument with one of them. I was like, what? Do I hate this fucking guy? No, I love them. And I find myself having difficulty with the feelings toward them.
Have you done the equanimity practice yet?
Maybe not specifically.
You will, we do it here, we do it in Refuge. And there's the core phrase, which I was saying, around to Tibby, is to bringing that friend to mind. And maybe sending them some forgiveness, asking them for forgiveness, sending them some loving kindness, sending them some compassion, seeing like, oh, I know this is a person who suffers like I do. And I'm doing my best to care about their suffering. And then the equanimity phrase that says, I also understand that this person's happiness or unhappiness is dependent on their actions, how they are responding to what's happening in their life, not my wishes for them. It can be a little bit tricky in these first three practices where I'm wishing, may you be happy, may you be at ease, may you be free from suffering. But then the Buddha says, now remember, your wishes ain't going to do shit for them. Your wishes are going to free your heart. Your wishes are going to make you a happier, more compassionate, more loving person in how you show up towards yourself and in the world. But our wishes aren't magically going to take anybody else's ignorance, confusion, attachment away from them. Everyone has to do that work for themselves. There's probably a lot of people wishing that you would have gotten sober a long time ago. That's not just for him, for a lot of us, right? But their wishes couldn't get us sober. And the Buddha's like, yeah, duh. Nobody's wishes or prayers or meditations are going to magically do anything for anybody but ourselves. You'll become kind, you'll become loving, you'll become compassionate. That's not going to remove anybody else's suffering, only yours. So remember the equanimity that says, don't get attached to other people's outcomes. They have to do that work. Now, compassion says, I love you, I care about you, I'll confront you, I'll try to educate you, I'll try to support you, I'll try to encourage you, I'll try to inspire you. All of those things. But I know I can't control you. I'll try to inspire you to do the right thing for yourself, but I know I can't make you do it. And, sometimes when we're really excited about something, we can be like, yo, have you heard about Buddhism? It's amazing. This dude was right. And people are just like, well, you really lost your shit. You lost your mind on some religious bullshit. What'd they do to you in California? You were so punk before. Now, fucking hippies got you, Will, man. Those fucking California people. It's not metal at all. Anyways, I hope that's helpful. I think that the equanimity practice, for me, it's been really key to see, I can get real attached to wanting people to agree with me, wanting people to see, oh, the Dharma is like, this is it. Like we have a map for living. And so many people are like, what are you talking about? It's not for everyone. Last one.
I want to just piggyback off what you said, something that's helped me. I listened to a lot of Ram Dass, and one of the things he's saying about someone he is having trouble with is he put a picture of them on the altar. And it used to be like, fuck you, you know. And I have a untreated, very narcissistic sister who's intertwined with my mom, and their karma is very interesting, talking about the compassion I have for them. I found myself a lot more at ease for putting a picture of my sister on my altar, and I cannot, you know, I try to send, I do as much forgiveness. I could try to, boy, I wish I could send all the love to fix them, but we can't do that. And so I found my reaction to what happens a lot better. And even when it's really intense, you know, just looking at her and finding comfort in myself, because that's all I can do. I can't control her. So if it helps you put a picture of them up, and some days you're going to want to be like, that's just, you know, hey, how's your reaction? Bring your awareness to. That's been helping me a lot. So yeah,
Absolutely.
It's good advice. And we'll end there tonight. It's almost 9 o'clock. Next week, I'll stick with these teachings. Maybe we'll go into compassion, maybe forgiveness next week, and we'll spend the next few weeks going through these different heart training practices. So maybe if you're down for a little challenge, do 30 minutes of loving kindness every day this week as your daily practice. This, may I be happy, may I be at ease, may I be free from suffering. Do it for 30 minutes every day on your cushion or chair, wherever you meditate. And then when you're walking through your life, when you're driving down the freeway, as often as you remember, put these thoughts in your mind. May I be happy. When somebody cuts you off, send them loving kindness. May you be happy, motherfucker. May you be at ease. May you be free from suffering. When you're getting annoyed at work or in your relationship, or think about bringing these phrases up more and more often, and just see what happens when you get your mind to think these friendly thoughts, and replace some of the unfriendly thoughts with these kind of thoughts towards yourself and each other. And then we'll open to a new practice next week. Class is done by donation. Against the Stream is a nonprofit organization that is supported by your generosity. Nobody's paying the bills around here. And as you see, you don't have to pay to come here. Everyone's welcome to come here free from any kind of set charge. But the tradition in Buddhism is to support teachers and centers and communities through freely offering what feels appropriate to you. If you need a ballpark for a drop-in class, like maybe $25 is appropriate. Like something like you'd spend on a yoga class, maybe you might spend $20 or $30 on a yoga class, or going to the movie, or thinking of all the ways we spend money. If you feel like this is a worthy place to offer some money, please be as generous as feels appropriate to you. If you can, please consider becoming a monthly supporter of Against the Stream. I'm saying I'd like to just support the organization, the community, by offering, I think there's like $25, $50, $100 a month, so that you're just choosing a level of support that you offer, whether you're coming to class or not coming to class. Just saying I want to support it, not just when I go there. Please consider that. The link for donations is in the chat for you folks on Zoom, and Tara is our volunteer. She'll be at the desk, and you can donate cash or Venmo or cards over there with her. About 7-day last announcement, there's a 7-day retreat in September coming up September 8th through 15th, 7-day silent meditation retreat, just up the mountains in Angeles Mountains, Running Springs, I believe. You're all invited. If you haven't registered yet, please check out the registration. There's QR codes on the board over there, or there's a link in the chat here. And registration's a little light. We often get more registrations the last couple weeks, but it's good for us to know who's coming so we can plan food and where people are sleeping and all of that stuff. But please consider joining us. 7-day retreat. I think that's all I got for tonight. May any goodness that comes from our practice and discussion of the Buddha's Dharma be shared outward in all directions with all living beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at ease. May all beings be free. And may we together create a positive change on this planet.